Welcome to the Healing Menace channel. If you are not watching this on YouTube and you're asking what the fuck, it's my YouTube channel, The Healing Menace. Pretty straightforward. More content coming soon, right after this. Today, we are getting into something very close to my heart, something very important in the world, something that will follow us forever as long as we are human. This is our nervous system, and maybe you're tired of hearing about it, but buckle in because it's a little bit different here. I have my drink. I suggest you grab one of your own. Excuse me. I was gonna say if you don't like burping. Let's get right into it, you guys. I am reading off of my trauma informed care manual. This is via the Skool platform. It's available. It'll be linked down below. It is not free 99, but I am reading it here today, so like I said, get cozy. It's a little bit of a wild ride, so make sure that you're not listening while very vulnerable, because this does get it vulnerable. So like I said, I'm reading off of my manual. These are literally the modules that I'll be reading off of for the sake of saving my brain bandwidth. I have a client coming in about 20-30 minutes, so anyway, this is the dedication part. This manual is dedicated first and foremost to my inner child, the one who endured the unimaginable, who died and resurrected time and time again. To her strength, her softness, and her stubborn light, this is for you. It is also for the ones who were cruelly silenced, coldly shut down, and ignorantly neglected. For those who lived under the weight of abuse, whether screamed out loud or hidden behind polite smiles and closed doors. I yearn for a world where we meet each other and ourselves as the ever developing beings we truly are, with gentleness, curiosity, and sacred respect. Abuse robs us of so many things we were never meant to lose, and silence allows the cycle to continue. So let this work be one small rebellion. Let it be a vow to no longer turn a blind eye. Let it be a balm, a torch, a roadmap. This manual is for the children who still need fierce protection. I did my makeup today. Excuse me. Alright. For those who grow up choosing integrity again and again, no matter how the world tried to twist them. And to you, yes, you, either who got the manual and is reading it, or are listening to me now, congratulations for waking up, first of all, and congratulations for choosing this. Thank you for choosing presence over patterns, awareness over avoidance. Thank you for daring to examine what hurts and for seeking a gentler way forward. This work is not easy, but it is holy. Your willingness to learn, unlearn, and begin again makes ripples that reach farther than you know. You are part of the culture shift. You are part of the healing. Thank you for being here. So let's talk a little bit about why trauma-informed care even matters. People heal better when they feel safe. When care is trauma-informed, people are more likely to engage, stay present, and actually benefit from the support being offered. When the nervous system feels safe, the body and mind can shift out of survival mode and into healing. TAC reduces re-traumatization and supports real, sustainable outcomes, not just temporary fixes. Trust is built, not assumed. Many people carry trauma from past relationships, systems, or authority figures. Trauma informed care doesn't demand trust, it builds it, it earns it through consistency, empathy, and choice. People feel respected rather than controlled, which changes everything about how they show up. Healing has to include the whole human. Trauma doesn't live in one compartment, it lives in the nervous system and impacts physical health, emotional regulation, behavior, communication, and connection. He honors the full human experience, creating care and leadership that is more ethical, effective, and deeply humane. It actively prevents harm. Excuse me. When trauma is ignored, even professional environments can cause harm through coercion, shaming, power imbalances, or unrealistic expectations. Trauma informed spaces are designed to reduce harm, prevent rewounding, and support regulation instead of burnout, shutdown, or disengagement. It protects children and other vulnerable communities. Children and marginalized populations are especially impacted by how power is used. He helps prevent emotional, physical, and systemic harm by prioritizing safety, consent, and voice, ensuring that those with less power are protected, never overlooked. And yes, this includes the corporate world. Trauma doesn't magically disappear when someone becomes an adult or gets a big job title. Safety shouldn't stop at childhood or at the therapy room door. Workplaces, leadership teams, and organizations shape nervous systems every day. Trauma informed organizations see better communication, lower turnover, healthier leadership, and more sustainable performance because people function better when they're not operating in survival mode. This is why TIC matters, y'all. All right. Let's talk about the unrecognized trauma effects in adults. This is the stuff that's running the show without anybody naming it, by the way. So, when trauma goes unrecognized, this is not talked about, not understood, not supported. It doesn't just disappear, it adapts, it hides, it shows up sideways. At first, it can look subtle. Over time, it starts touching everything: the body, the mood, the relationships, the way someone sees themselves. Let's talk about how that actually plays out. What it can look like in an individual. First, the body starts speaking. Unprocessed trauma doesn't just live in memories, it lives in the nervous system. That can look like chronic pain with no clear cause, right? So, headaches, back pain, stomach issues, and doctors say, well, everything looks fine. Autoimmune conditions or inflammation patterns, constant fatigue, getting sick easily, insomnia, nightmares, restless sleep. When someone has been in survival mode for years, their body doesn't know how to turn the alarm off. And living in fight or flight long term really takes a toll. Sometimes people cope by numbing. This is with alcohol, substances, food, overworking, scrolling, anything to quiet the internal noise. Not because they're weak, because they're overwhelmed. Number two, mental and emotional patterns. Unrecognized trauma often gets mislabeled as anxiety, depression, mood swings, personality issues, being dramatic, being difficult. But underneath, it's usually a nervous system that never got to complete a survival response. You might see chronic anxiety, like we've mentioned before, low moods, flashbacks or intrusive thoughts, emotional overwhelm from small triggers, feeling on edge all the time, being hypervigilant, difficulty trusting others, either shutting down emotionally or clinging tightly to people. It's exhausting to feel unsafe in environments that are objectively safe. And when that's happening, relationships get complicated. Number three, brain fog and self concept. Trauma impacts cognitive functioning as well. People might struggle with common things like focus and concentration, memory, decision making, following through, and impulse control. And then comes the painful part. They blame themselves. I'm lazy, I'm broken, I'm too much, I can't get it together. Unrecognized trauma often turns into a negative identity. Not because it's true, but because nobody helped them make sense of what happened. Number four, behavior that's actually protection. So when trauma isn't processed, behavior becomes protective, survival. This might look like avoiding people or isolating. This could also be explosive anger or irritability. This is also risky behavior. This is self sabotage. Struggles with boundaries, like either none at all or walls a mile high. So, from the outside, it can look chaotic, and from the inside, it's usually a nervous system trying to just feel safe. How this impacts the people around them. And we're speaking on adults. Trauma rarely affects just one person, it moves through systems, it moves through your relationships. So, unacknowledged trauma can create emotional distance, it can create suspicion or mistrust. This can also lead to overreactions to small conflicts, codependent dynamics. This is also emotional burnout for partners or friends. Sometimes loved ones step into caretaker roles. Sometimes they feel shut out. Sometimes they don't understand what's happening at all. Without language for trauma, people personalize the symptoms. Does that make sense? They take those symptoms personally sometimes when you don't have the language for trauma. Número dos, the system número dos that unrecognized trauma moves through. This is parenting and family systems. This one is really tender, y'all. If a parent's trauma is unrecognized, it can show up as overprotection or control freakiness, emotional unavailability, inconsistent responses, reactivity, and difficulty tolerating a child's big emotions. Children raised in that environment under the care of a traumatized parent may internalize the stress patterns, coping styles, or beliefs that were never consciously taught. They were just modeled, they were just shown. This is how generational trauma continues. Not because anyone is evil, but because no one intervened with awareness. Número tres, work and professional life, your career. In the workplace, unrecognized trauma can look like difficulty focusing, burnout, conflict with authority, emotional outbursts, missed deadlines, and calling out frequently due to health issues. And again, without trauma awareness, it gets framed as incompetence or attitude, when it's often dysregulation, overwhelm. Number four is the social system and community impact. People may withdraw from community spaces. They may feel disconnected or like they don't belong anywhere. And individuals with trauma histories can be more vulnerable to manipulation or exploitation, especially if their boundaries were never supported or respected. Isolation deepens the wound. The ripple effect of all of this is that unrecognized trauma doesn't stay contained. It ripples into families, right? Into partnerships, the workplaces, into the entire community. One person's unprocessed pain can shape dynamics for years, even generations. This is why the work matters. Stop it. Not just for the individual, for the whole system, for the collective. Why recognition changes everything is healing doesn't start with fixing behavior, it starts with recognition, right? When trauma is named, shame decreases, blame softens, and curiosity replaces judgment. So safety becomes possible. Trauma informed care isn't about labeling people, it's about understanding what survival did to them and responding in ways that restore their dignity, their choice, and their regulation. When we shift from what is wrong with you to what happened to you and how can we support safety now, everything changes. And that's where true healing begins. All right. All right. This one is very important, as is the rest of the manual, but unrecognized trauma effects in children. This is when, the behavior is loud, but the story underneath is quiet. They don't know how to talk about it. Children don't always have the words for trauma. They don't say, I'm dysregulated due to chronic stress exposure. They show you, right? And if the adults around them don't recognize what they're seeing, the trauma gets mislabeled as bad behavior, attention seeking, lazy, dramatic, difficult, when in reality, it's usually a nervous system that does not feel safe. Yes, even under a parent's care. Let's walk through what that can actually look like. Number one is emotional and psychological impact. Anxiety that never turns off. Some kids are constantly on edge. They're always worrying, expecting something bad to happen, startled easily, overthinking small things, being extremely clingy with caregivers. Separation anxiety can become intense, especially if they've ever experienced abandonment, neglect, or unpredictability. And let's keep our egos in check as adults and remember that this is their POV, okay? We cannot internalize their responses, okay? Their body remembers instability even if the room looks calm. Depression or emotional numbing. Other kids go quiet. They are withdrawn, have flat expression, they are less interested in playing, not excited about things they used to love. They may lose interest in friends, school, food, even joy. And underneath that, there's often shame. Children tend to internalize trauma. They think it must be me. I'm bad. I deserved it. No one taught them that trauma is something that happened to them, not something that is them. PTSD symptoms in children. Trauma in children often shows up through nightmares, sleep disturbances, reenacting events in play. This is where play therapy can be very insightful. Intrusive memories, big reactions to reminders of what happened. Play is often how children process what they don't have language for. If we're paying attention to it, it tells us a lot. Emotional dysregulation. Some kids have huge reactions to seemingly small triggers. They can look like intense meltdowns, sudden anger, extreme mood swings, overreaction to changes in routine. It can look dramatic, but what's usually happening is this: their nervous system cannot accurately gauge safety, so it reacts fast and big. It's confused. Número dos, these symptoms, signs of behavioral manifestations. So this is survival strategies in disguise, okay? This is aggression and acting out. You might see hitting, yelling, defiance, refusing authority, impulsivity. From the outside, it can look oppositional. From the inside, it's often fear. When trust has been broken, even just once, authority doesn't feel safe, it feels threatening. Some children may engage in self harm or risky behaviors as they get older, not because they want attention, but because they don't know how else to discharge emotional pain. Withdrawal and avoidance is another side of this. Other kids disappear, right? They can be avoiding peers, avoiding school, avoiding certain places or people, shutting down in group settings. If something reminds them of the trauma, even subtly, their body will try to escape it. That's protection. Regression can happen as well. Sometimes a child will revert to earlier developmental behaviors. This is like bedwetting, thumb sucking, baby talk, clinginess they had outgrown. Regression is not manipulation. It's a nervous system seeking safety in a stage where it once felt protected. Número tres, cognitive and academic effects in children when trauma is unrecognized. Trauma impacts the brain, right? We know this. A child who is in survival mode cannot fully access learning mode. You might see trouble concentrating, forgetfulness, disorganization, incomplete assignments, zoning out in class, inconsistent academic performance. They may have moments of brilliance followed by periods of struggle. It's not intelligence, it's capacity. And capacity is tied to safety. When the brain is scanning for danger, it's not prioritizing math facts, is it? No. Número cuatro, physical and somatic symptoms. Children often somaticize trauma. This looks like frequent headaches, stomach aches, random body pain, fatigue, frequent illness, especially if they're in ongoing stress like domestic conflict or instability. Their body may stay in chronic stress mode, and chronic stress in a little body shows up physically. Sleep disturbances, like we talked about before, nightmares, night terrors, refusing to sleep alone, avoiding bedtime altogether. Sleep requires surrender, right? And surrender requires safety. If the body doesn't feel safe, sleep becomes difficult. Número cinco, relationships and social development. Attachment struggles, right? Children with unrecognized trauma may cling intensely. They may push people away. They may have a fear of abandonment. They may struggle to trust adults. They can avoid affection also, or they become overly dependent. If intimacy once came with harm, closeness can feel confusing for them. Peer struggles. So they may misread social cues. They may assume threat where there isn't one, overreact in social situations. They can become targets for bullying. They may feel different in a bad way or isolated, right? Trauma can create a felt sense of, I don't belong. And belonging is foundational for development. Long term effects if it goes unrecognized. So, when childhood trauma is not acknowledged, this increases the risk for anxiety disorders, depression, eating disorders, substance abuse, relationship instability, and repeating dysfunctional patterns in adulthood. This is how generational trauma continues. Not because people don't care, but because no one named what was happening and made adjustments. So, when we recognize trauma early, shame decreases, behavior makes sense, right? And punishment shifts to support. Regulation becomes possible overall. Trauma informed care in schools, homes, and healthcare settings isn't about excusing behavior, it's about understanding it. It's about asking, what does this child need to feel safe right now? Not how do we make them comply? So, what actually helps children with unrecognized trauma is safe, predictable environments. This is consistency, structure, warmth, clear boundaries that feel steady, not scary. Therapeutic support. So, this can be play therapy, trauma focused CBT, EMDR, somatic work, spaces where their story can be processed safely. Regulated adults. This is the one that matters the most. This is why we're here. Children borrow regulation from adults around them. When caregivers, teachers, and professionals respond with calm, empathy, and predictability, the child's nervous system slowly learns, I don't have to be on guard all the time. And that's where healing begins for them, really. Not with control, with safety. And when we change the environment around a child, we change their whole trajectory. Awesome.